Hi, welcome to Western Hills Church of Christ, brought to you by McDonald's. Yeah, we could follow the super. Are we on? Good. Good morning. Welcome to Western Hills Church of Christ, our Bible study this morning. If y'all would find a seat here, especially my wife, if she would find a seat. She's still not paying attention to the instructor, so that's a grade point. Yeah, I guess in school it's a grade point, and at church it's coming forward for confession. So I think those could be the same things with that. So anyway, glad you're here. We are going to be in the book of Matthew. So if you'll turn to Matthew, we're gonna spend our time in chapter 5, but we're gonna kind of get a running start into chapter 5 by looking at the end of chapter 4. Hope everybody is enjoying this transition to spring, and that nobody's getting sunburned by the 80 plus, almost 90 degree weather already. And just use a lot of sunscreen if you need to, and enjoy this wonderful weather we're having. Okay, I think most people are settled down, so let's begin our class period by asking God to bless this time. If you would please bow and let's pray. Father, in all things we give you glory, and in all things we give you praise. And one of the special things that we give you honor and glory for is the leaving of your word for us to read and to study and to let it be part of us. Father, thank you so much for the way in which the message is relevant not only to the people of that day, 2,000 years ago, but to us today and for generations to come. And we ask your blessings on this hour as we dig into the word that you had left us. Open our hearts, our minds, our souls, our being to understanding a little bit more the mysteries and the revelations and the joy of your word. And it's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. All right, we are going to be spending most of our time getting into the Sermon on the Mount, but before we do that, let's just kind of ease into it. If you look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 23, we remember when last we met, Jesus was in the northern part of Judea, of Israel, and he was up near Galilee, which is where he set up his home, and he set up his home in what town? Capernaum. Capernaum. Even though he was from Nazareth, born in Nazareth, Capernaum, he is a seaside town there in the Sea of Galilee, and that's where he set up his home. So he's in that area of Galilee preaching, and look at what it says there in verse 23. He went throughout all Galilee, which is a big region, so he spent a lot of time doing preaching and teaching and miracles and attesting to the fact that the kingdom of God was at hand. He went throughout all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction among the people. So his fame, isn't that interesting? So his fame spread throughout all Syria. And they brought him all the sick, those afflicted with various diseases and pains, those oppressed by demons, those having seizures, paralytics, and he healed them. I don't know about you, but that's like a full day, 7 days a week, 365. I mean, with people, because it says all Syria. So this is going outside of Galilee area. This is all of that northern region. The notoriety, the fame of Jesus, this miracle healer who has a message which is interesting, but he is attesting to that message by doing signs and miracles, and we see the signs and miracles and we can't argue those, so maybe we shouldn't argue the message, and that was pretty much the point, right? Jesus came to attest the message by signs and wonders, and it's starting to spread in this northern region, all Syria. But look at all the different people and all the different types that are having various diseases, the sick and the pains, demons, seizures, paralytics, and he healed them, and he healed them, and he healed them, and he healed them. And he continued to teach in their synagogues, and he healed them. Verse 25, and great crowds followed him from Galilee and the Decapolis. The Decapolis is a set of 10 different cities in that northern region. And from Jerusalem and Judea. They even come from down south, Jerusalem, Judea, and from beyond the Jordan River. So the word is out about this person. And who is he? He's a miracle worker. Well, let's kind of move and let's take our sick grandparents or our demon-possessed nephew or whoever it may be. Let's take him to this miracle worker and see if the miracle worker can work miracles with people that we know and love. Okay? So I want you to see the breadth of what was happening in Jesus' ministry. It was just shooting up. It was just blossoming. And then all of these people are coming to him and coming to him and coming to him. And so then we show up and we transition to chapter 5, verse 1. Seeing the crowds, he said, I need a little mini retreat. I need to kind of step away from a little bit of this. And we know that this was common in the life of Jesus, right? That he would routinely step away and that he would commune with God his Father and he would refresh himself to get ready for the next day of continuing the ministry. So we have here, seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain. Okay, so there's a mountain in this area. When he sat down, his disciples came to him. All right, let's dwell with that just for a little bit. First of all, I'd like to show you a little bit of where Jesus probably was. The Mount of Beatitudes, it's in northern Israel, up there on the northern part of the Sea of Galilee, near the Chorazin Plateau. And when you get down from the plateau down to the seacoast, you get some of the towns, such as Capernaum it was a seaside town. Overlooking the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee, near the town of Capernaum, enchanting views of the northern part of the lake and across to the cliffs of the Golan Heights. So you know what I thought I'd do? I thought I'd show you a little bit about where this place is and what this looks like. Okay, now let me explain this one because you're saying, what is that? Okay, well that's the Sea of Galilee from the north. That's kind of a space shot looking Sea of Galilee from the north. And if you follow up at the very top, you'll see that that's kind of the Jordan River Valley, that little low spot in between, that dark area. And that's going south toward the Dead Sea. So this is the Sea of Galilee. What we see at the bottom here is the northern rim. Nazareth and Cana is off. They're off to the far right, way over there. That's further west. So we're looking from the north down on the Sea of Galilee. If you can see it, it's highlighted. There's a little yellow dot, just kind of on that right quadrant right there. That's where the Sermon on the Mount is traditionally said to have been spoken. Now, if you look dead center, right in the bottom, you see this little blip. It's hard to see on this map. That's where Capernaum is. Capernaum is that town right on the seacoast that has a little blip going up on it, and that's Capernaum. And said, wow, it's really hard to see that. Well, then why don't we take another look at what this looks like? This is looking from the west. This is looking from the west. So if you're coming from Nazareth, if you're coming from Cana, and you're coming straight into the Sea of Galilee, you would come in and you would come up on a little hill and you would look down on the Sea of Galilee, and off to the left, the northern, would be Capernaum, near that little stretch of land that's sticking out there, and says, okay, well that's still really nice, but could we see a little bit more? So I thought I'd say, let's take a little bit more. This is looking at it from the east, that northern realm, and that's going to be the Capernaum area. Right there in the middle, and you see up to the right, sloping up, That's the Mount of the Beatitudes, where the Sermon on the Mount is said to have taken place. And it says, well, it doesn't look like much of a mountain. I mean, well, they could call it like the Sermon on the Hill that overlooks the Galilee River near Capernaum, but that's too long. The transcribers would have shortened that and said, no, let's just call it a mount, because you see the mountain areas that are around there. Now, they're not mountains like what we would know, the Rockies, but in that area, it's there. So if we're over there, again, from the east looking toward the west, if we're in the west looking toward the east, you see the slope of the mountain and you see all the trees up in that area, and that's kind of where he went with all of this. This is a shot looking across the sea, and you see the slope of the mountain there. Capernaum is down off to the right, just out of view, but you see the slope of what this is. So it's not really a mountain, it's really more of a hill that's overlooking the town. Here's another shot of it. And what I wanted to show you this one is that there's two structures here that you're going to strain to see, but I'd like for you to see them. You see right on the seacoast, there's a small little building that's it looks like it's derelict. You see that? These are the type of buildings that we'd see if we're driving out in West Texas and you're driving down the road and you kind of went, wow, people used to live there. And it's not used, and it's whatever. That used to be a Byzantine church that was established to commemorate the spot of the Sermon on the Mount. Well, that kind of went into disarray, and what happened is, if you look up at the top in that big clump of trees, you see this little white little thing sticking up there? That is the church of the Sermon on the Mount that was built on that spot. And you know that, the Christians and even Muslims and other religious groups, they would build churches over shrine areas. So if you've taken a tour of the Holy Land and you say, hey, I want to see something, well, you're probably going to be going to a place that has a church built on top of it, okay? Because they want to protect it, number one, but they look at it as a holy place. Well, this is the church. So if you look at Capernaum is off to the right along the seacoast, that you see that this is where they say that the church was. This is another shot looking up at the top of the mountain across that area. This is the actual church area looking down onto the Sea of Galilee, okay? And it's a pretty impressive, church building up in that area it's a big visitors area that people go to. But if you were just sitting out on the plain and you just found a place that was out somewhere, this is the view that you would have looking over the Sea of Galilee. And I thought that these were interesting, that when you get up that high and you look down, that you can see the mountain range, you can see the Sea of Galilee. This is looking a little bit to the west part over Capernaum is over that little rise. And so you have some really nice views looking down on top of the mountain. And this is one of my favorite spots, because I imagine that if Jesus were going to be going someplace to visit and to talk with his disciples, he'd probably find a shaded place. And so this would typify, I think, and this is on that Sermon on the Mount area there. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of the geography of the setting and the context of what that is. In fact, if you look over far to the right, on the right part of the Sea of Galilee, that's the western edge. And again, if you go further west about 10, 15 miles, you're going to get to Cana and Nazareth. That's way over in that area. So that's kind of the setting of all of this. So when we look at what happens in verse 1, when he sat down, went up on the mountain, sat down, his disciples came to him. For years and years and years, I thought this was the Sermon on the Mount was something that he was, teaching to all of the great crowds that were there. But as later as I went more studying, it became apparent this wasn't everybody. This were not the big multitudes. He was stepping away from the great multitudes so that he could have a little bit of one-on-one time with his apostles and the disciples. Because remember, he had just kind of selected them, and they were starting to coalesce into a type of a clan, a type of a group that was going to be going and continuing to do the ministry. Well, what's really neat about this, and when we think about it in this way, this is one time that Jesus says, I think I need to impart to them certain principles. I mean, if we're going to be doing this, if we're going to be teaching the message, then I need to start entrusting some core values and traits and characteristics into the people who are going to be entrusted with that messaging. And that's what the Sermon on the Mount is. It's fairly intimate, but it's a series of teachings all the way through with his disciples to kind of lay a foundation so that as they continue the message, then they can have the mind of the teacher. Jesus has the mind of God, and now the mind of Jesus and the mind of God is now being imparted to them and starting to be internalized. So when we talk about these different, what we call the Beatitudes, or the blesseds, or the happies with this right on the front end, keep in mind, I think, what these are character traits. These are character traits. He says, if you want to be part of what I'm trying to do, these are some qualities, some values that are crucial for you to internalize and then to display. Remember, we understand later on, James says that you can have faith and no works, or you can have works and no faith. But the richness of moving through life as a mature person is to combine an internal conviction, which is your value system, with behaviors, what you do, okay? And so on the front of this, he's talking about here on what we call the Beatitudes, and that's the Greek word beatus with all this, blessed beatus, and so that's where we get Beatitudes from. But he's saying these are the core values that I would think are important for you to internalize. And so what's the very first one that he comes up with? The very first truth. Now, I don't know if these are hierarchy. I don't think they are. I don't think one's better than another. But isn't it interesting that when somebody is giving you a list of things that all carry equal weight, which one do they pull out first? It may be significant, it may be arbitrary. We don't know. I like to default on the side of, isn't it interesting that the very first one value that Jesus tries to espouse and to teach the disciples is, blessed are the poor in spirit. Now, this is going to be interactive, and I will repeat your comments for the people who are listening at home, so be ready to talk. This is a class, anybody can talk, all right? All right, so what does it mean? What is poor in spirit? Not thinking highly of yourself. Humility. I see a couple of nods. Anything else? Pardon? Acknowledging my need for God, which is an amazingly solid, sound hierarchy. I mean, because our need for God, remember, we are children, and children have a need to be parented and to be guided and to move toward growth. So that when you think about the structure of that, yeah, I think there's something good with that. The poor in spirit, when you counteract those with the pride and the haughtiness, because we know about the arrogant. I don't need anybody. I don't need anything. I can do whatever I want. Wow, that sounds like a 2-year-old, doesn't it? And bless our hearts, we probably know some people who started out that way at 2, and now they became 10, and then 20, and then 30, and then 40, and 50, and 60. That they still have that same attitude, that I don't need anybody's help. I can figure it out. I am the center of the known universe. But this poor in spirit has this context of humility for sure. For sure. I'm aware that I am dependent. I'm aware that I am not self-sufficient. I am aware that I need assistance and help. One of the first steps, for example, since I teach a course in addictions at the university, is delving into the 12-step approach to addiction recovery as a strategy. And the very first step is, I admit that I am powerless. I admit that I'm powerless over this addiction. I can't do it by myself. There's something that I need to rely on that's greater than me, that's more powerful than me, and I acknowledge my position. That's really kind of what the poor in spirit is. It's an acknowledgement that I am not at the top of the food chain. There's something bigger at there, and I acknowledge that, and I partner with that. So the poor in spirit has this attitude of humility, this attitude of approaching, that when we approach the throne of God, we don't approach with arrogance. We can approach with confidence. That's different. We can still be very confident and very humble, right? But it's hard to be very arrogant and very humble at the same time, because they kind of collide. They kind of crash with each other, okay? So let's look at the next one. Well, here, when we're continuing about the poor in spirit, spiritual possessions, we want a better spiritual state. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Look at what that means, is that all of the things that we are arrogantly possibly striving for are going to be presented to us and given to us if we continue to be full of humility. The kingdom of heaven and everything that happens with the kingdom of heaven, because we understand that the kingdom of heaven has a present and a future component to it. So all of the gifts and the benefits, reaping the fruit of the Spirit of joy and peace, those are things that we do not have to wait until heaven. Those are things that we can nurture right now. And we can attain all of the benefits of growing in those as we mature and evolve. But it really does take this sense of humility. Now, what does this remind you of about Jesus? And maybe in what Paul says to the church at Philippi, like maybe in chapter 2. Does this ring any bells about humility? Do y'all need more coffee this morning? What happens in Philippians chapter 2? How is Jesus described? As a servant? As one who did not look at his equality with God as something to be arrogant about, boastful, but instead he humbled himself by giving up his glory and following the precepts of what God the Father wanted him to do. That's why I think the first one out of the chute of the Beatitudes is poor in spirit. I don't think he's grandstanding. I think he's saying, if you really, really want to be God's person, you deny yourself. Yes?
The Greek word is for the poor. That word poor literally means beg to survive.
Beg to survive. The word poor in the Greek was common. It means beg to survive. Okay? You see the appeal that goes with that. All right? Now, that's just the first one. We've got some others we need to go through, so let's take a look at that. Let's look at blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. What does this mean? Who mourns?
Those who care for the lost, those that have lost a loved one or something precious.
Someone who has lost a loved one or someone precious to them. So, who mourns? All of us at one time or another. Any human who breathes mourns. Humans are, we cannot escape loss. We cannot escape loss. We're the ones that are going to say, is that a little bitty loss, a moderate loss, or a big time loss? We'll put value on loss. But because we exist, we all experience loss. I don't know how many of y'all might have had a child that when you needed to move, when they were at a young grade age and you had to move to a different school, that they just said, yes, mother, father, we are so thrilled to be able to relocate from our home and our neighborhood and our best friends and the teachers we love and go to some strange world and exist there and thrive there. Oh, joy. Oh, hey, play, thank you. Can we do this again next month? No, they don't do that. They usually come kind of, maybe not kicking and screaming, sometimes kicking and screaming, but because they're mourning the loss of what they had and potentially going into something that's going to be a little bit uncertain. They may not know. They just know that they're having to give up something they want to cling to. And when that goes away, there is a grieving process. There is a mourning process. So isn't it interesting that the very second one that he says, if you're going to be humble, you're going to be giving up some stuff. You're going to be letting go of some things that are part of your comfort world. You're going to be asked to continue to sustain giving up the comfortable for bigger reasons. And he says, it'll be okay. Isn't that what parents tell the kids? It'll be okay. Well, I don't know anybody. It'll be okay. Before you had your friends at your new place, you didn't have the friends. You had to gain friends, so you can do it again here. I don't want to. I know you don't want to. We work through that, but they will be comforted because as parents, we're comforting. And so the idea about the mourning is happy are those who grieve. The mourning, what are we mourning over? Is this at the big level? Are we mourning over sins? Sins of other people? Grieving over the sins of others? That can be very, very common way of looking at it. But everyone who mourns will receive divine comfort. Now, hopefully we'll receive earthly comfort from friends, but not always. The mourning is going to be usual and common. Not always pleasant, but it's something that happens to everybody. In fact, the mourning, the grieving thing, everyone has to have their own philosophy of what it means to let go of something in order to acquire something else. That's what Jesus is described in Jesus in Philippians 2. I left heaven and gave up in order to attain something better. That's the hope that we have. And that's what we do when we let go of all of the sins and the things that entangle us in hope of acquiring something better, which all the way through Scripture is assured. It will be better. Continue. Go back and go through the fruit of the Spirit of joy and goodness and peace and kind. Look at the fruit that can come from a life that is humble and that accepts the mourning process, that as we mourn, we know we will be comforted. Very reassuring here. So now he goes into blessed are the meek or the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to be meek?
These are all tying into each other because Numbers 12:13 says Moses was a humble man, more humble than anyone on the earth. He's got to be gentle. He's got to be meek. He's got to tie into 1 and 2 and 3.
Good.
So it's all building together.
Comment on Moses, how he was humble, but he was also gentle and meek, and how all these intersect with each other. Absolutely. See, again, all of these are traits and qualities that Jesus, in talking with his disciples right there, is saying, it's important that you understand these things. And I imagine at some level, some of them went, okay, sure, yeah, I get that. Others are going, wow. And others are going, what? I'm going to have to copy somebody else's notes because I'm not sure exactly if I got the point, and I don't want to flunk the test, thing. So humans are humans, and the way in which they're internalizing it is going to be different. But as was mentioned here in class, is that yes, These are qualities that are going to be building up on each other. So what does meek mean?
Well, it includes humility because the meek at least act in a way that tends to, they don't question authority or they
Okay.
accept it.
Okay, you said a really good word there. They act in a way. Because meekness is something that we can really notice. You know, poor in spirit, humility, it may be hard to see that. I mean, we can. But if somebody is being gentle, that may mean that they're not necessarily being harsh. Yes, Roger?
Think more highly of others than of themselves.
Think more highly of others than of themselves. And there is this idea of coming across in a very soft way. The presentation to life is not just in your face. That's not meekness. That's not gentleness. It's a softness in the way in which we engage with others. Yes. We have our Greek expert here, so.
Well, no, I've studied philosophy.
Excellent.
The translation for that word gentle is the same word they use to define breaking of a horse.
It's the same word, the word gentle is the same word used for breaking a horse, okay? And you know that when you try to train a horse, you want to keep their spirit alive. You want to keep them motivated and functioning, but you want to have them come into a compliance with the riders.
It's strength under control.
Pardon?
It's strength under control.
Strength under control. Yes.
That's just what I was going to say.
And that's what he was going to say here. So we have this mindset going on here that y'all read the same translation and saw the same footnote. That's good. But do keep in mind, I think that one of the things about this, blessed are the meek. That doesn't mean that you are a floor mat, that you just let people run over you. Because meekness doesn't have anything to do with confidence, self-assurance. We can be I know whom I believed, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep that, right? There can be a confidence in what we have in God, and a confidence in what we have in flesh. Do we come across in an arrogant way, or do we come across in a meek and gentle way? So I'm not going to take a show of hands on how many people are blessed when you are driving on the road to go to work in the mornings. And we'll just move off of that, and we'll continue to do it. Remember, being meek is not being weak. Inherit the earth. You can really enjoy the blessings. Because I think one of the things that comes with this type of humility and gentility is a slowness, as I said, a softness. We're moving through life in a steady way. I think it gives us an opportunity to observe more, you know? If you're moving slowly towards someone, it gives you an opportunity to scan and to absorb and internalize more, which means the slowing down to smell the roses dynamic is probably more in line with someone who has a meekness about life than someone who has an arrogance and a boldness and a stepping into it with that kind of harshness in life. And so it's a demeanor that he's talking about. Meek individuals put the right priority on earthly possessions, right? We try to enjoy as much as we can with that. Okay. Blessed, verse 6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied.
Seeking God.
Yes, the heart that says there is a God, he is ruler, and the relationship that I can have with him is something that provides me the essence of being complete. Okay? And with that is why would I want to diss that? Why would I want to avoid that? Why would I want not to seek that? So this desire, righteousness, this beauty of holiness, has an idea that if you seek me, you will find me. As the deer pants for the water, as we look for the sustenance of life to come from something other than self, we can find the grounding of the sustenance and the enjoyment of the sustenance of life in seeking that through God. Okay? Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful. What does that mean? I'm giving you answers. Why? Because we're going to be running out of time, because we're going to go through verse 14 in all of this. Mercy is compassion. Mercy is looking at someone and having an understanding of their situation in life and feeling, not just feeling pity. It's not pity. It's not pity. Empathy can be a part of it. Empathy can be a part of it. Sympathy can be a part of it, right? There can be this awareness that someone's life is full of groanings. And we don't know what those groanings are, but we understand groanings. We understand, we share in groanings. Even though theirs may be unique to them, mine unique to me, we have a compassion and an understanding that to the extent that I can provide this type of compassion, that I can give that. Because Jesus is going to be sending them out saying, you're going to run up against people that are going to spit in your face. So how do I want you to respond? Wow, poor in spirit, understand grief and loss, these things, meekness, continue to hunger and thirst for yourself and see what others can do, show mercy, be compassionate. Then he goes into, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in heart is a really interesting concept, because the concept really has to do with, I think, a holistic approach to life. Now, I know that there's people in here that you know and have run across people who are pure in heart. And when you think about them, they bring a warmth to your heart and a smile to your face, because you just sense that they have this. It's not naivete. It's not being, oh, yeah, I'm just... No, the pure in heart generally is someone who first, out of the chute, gives the benefit of the doubt. Gives the benefit of the doubt, which reduces judgment, which reduces bias. Pure in heart says, I don't know your journey, but I know journeys are hard. So whatever I can do to help your journey, I will be willing to do that. Yes?
It's interesting to me to think about what his apostles thought as he's telling them these things. My suspicion is that they're looking at him and saying, yeah, this is him.
Yeah.
This is what he does. We want to be like him.
Yes. We want to be like Jesus, and this is a goal to attain, because I think in the short time that they knew them, I mean, Jesus, keep in mind, when Jesus would walk up and says, hey, I want you to be a disciple, stop what you're doing and come follow me, they went, okay. No, there was something going on that they intuited about the presence of Jesus, that they said, I want to learn about that. And here, Jesus says, if you would like to be more like me, these are some of the things that are going to be the foundational linchpins of all this. Yes?
Andrew, when he ran to get Peter, said, we have found the Messiah.
Yes. Andrew ran to Peter and said,
We have found the Messiah.
we have found the Messiah. So this was not just some everyday person walking up and down Galilee with this. They intuited this.
I believe the church is the one place you will find a pure in heart. I think that's what we as Christians are. We That's what we do. We believe that.
Yeah, the church is probably a best place to find people and to associate with people who are striving hard to have this pure in heartness. Because I think when I challenge you to think of somebody, you may have been inclined to think about somebody who's associated in your religious training all the way through. Okay? It's a good point, good point. So, peacemakers. Peacemakers are not the people that kind of stir trouble up, but try to help bring about a ministry of reconciliation. We try to reconcile differences. The opposite of peacemaker is what? Troublemaker. Right? Wow, okay. Now, remember the church is made up of humans, and before humans became Christians, they were humans. And so the humanity is stuck with them, and the Christianity is designed to manage that. But we probably know, and even within our religious fellowships, that there are people who are peacemakers and people who are less peacemakers. Maybe, right? We know that because humanity has a way of just kind of rearing up every now and then, which is why to be a disciple, it takes a disciplined approach to strive to do these things. So hopefully within the church, we will find people who are more looking for ways to make peace and not stir up trouble. I don't know to what extent this necessarily means a peacemaker is someone who does not take up arms to defend the country. And I am not going to go there today. But just keep in mind, a peacemaker is someone who doesn't deliberately stir up trouble. They try to find ways of reconciliation. I hear your comment, but can I move on? Thank you very much, because I did hear the first bell, and I'm sure it's brilliant. Tom has a comment on this. Please, at the end of class, go to him and say, Tom, what was that word of wisdom? And he will share it with you if he can remember. Okay? That sounded better up here before it came out here, you know? All right, well, okay. So, and then he's kind of summoned these up. He summoned this up. He says, if you're going to live this kind of a life, I want you to understand one thing. You're not going to be really, welcome to every party on the block. There may be people who will ostracize you. There may be people who will spit on you. There may be people who will stone you, ridicule you, murder you because of your belief system. So those who are choosing to be different this way are taking on the mantle of understanding that you're going to get pushback. And the pushback is always going to be there. Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulations. The original Greek word for tribulation is pushback. No, it's not. I just made that up. But that's kind of what that is. Okay? You're going to have problems. So, to be ready for persecution, it can come in many, many forms, not the least of which can come from family and friends and other people. But we can understand that if we are being persecuted for doing the right thing, we know that we share in the sufferings of Christ with all that. So let me close by just talking about salt and light for just a little bit. Verse 13, you are the salt of the earth. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. Okay, so what are the characteristics or functions of salt? Really quick, you know this. Preservative and seasoning and income. Yeah, okay, no, that's it. The only two I came up with were seasoning and preservative, right? Okay. Functions of light. Elimination of the dark, right? Okay, who hasn't yet been to one of the caverns where they turn off the lights? And you can feel the coldness and you can feel the darkness and how destabilizing that can be. And how a little bit of light can lighten that whole cavern. That's a great illustration for all of this. But the idea of what salt and light does is that Jesus is basically saying, understand that if you acquire these traits in the Beatitudes, which are the internal qualities, now you get to demonstrate those traits by being a preservative of the things that are holy and being a seasoning to people's life so that their life can be better. And you're also going to be the light, which is going to provide a way in which people can move. You know that a lot of times they will light lights to light a pathway, right? Lighting a pathway lights the way to go from here to there. And Jesus is saying, if you internalize the Beatitudes and become that person, then you are charged with being salt. And you're charged with being light. Those are the basic principles of this. There's other truths that are in there. Read those on your own, and we'll see y'all next week.